And welcome back to Hawkeye's House of Horrors. If you've been here before, if this is your first time visiting my channel or seeing me in any video here, thank you very much for coming into this House of Horrors. And I am Hawkeye, and I'm wondering or hoping we've got some Jason Voorhees fans that might be tuning in. I'm here to bring for you today the first Friday the 13th film where Jason has a very big role in it, and that is the first sequel, Friday the 13th Part 2. And I'm very happy, pretty excited to bring a review for you today about this movie. I own this movie. I've seen this movie countless times, much like a lot of the Friday the 13th films. Um, I guess I consider myself a fan of the films, even though I don't consider any of them amazing or really great. But I still really enjoy what they do well. For me as a horror fan, and I have like the 8 pack, the original 8 films on DVD right here. Um, and I did a review for the original Friday the 13th. So if you haven't seen that, hey, go check that out as well. And this is the DVD itself on a combo pack, I guess, with the first one and the second one. Each of the films is with another, giving us 4 discs for the 8 films. Now, this film was directed by Steve Miner. Now, he had worked on the original, and he wore many hats for the original Friday the 13th, including assistant director, associate producer, and unit production manager. But for the second one, he decided to direct it, and this is actually his directorial debut. And I must say, yes, absolutely. It's not just the directing, but there's writing as well that does this. It follows a blueprint of the original, um, much like the screenplay. But I think he does a very good job in his directorial debut. Steve would go on to direct the next Friday the 13th, Part 3, as well as also in the vein of horror, House, which was really good, and Warlock, the original Warlock. All 4 of these films are from the 80s as well. I think Warlock was 1989. Now, the screenplay was done by Ron Kurz, who had helped on the script for the original Friday the 13th as well. And he also wrote another 1981 slasher that is Eyes of a Stranger, which I think is good. It was also done by the same group that did the original Friday the 13th as well. I think it was Georgetown Productions, if I'm not mistaken. So, anyways, this sucker was released on May the 1st, 1981, in New York City, LA, and San Francisco. Now, this film had a larger budget than the original. It had a budget of a million or 1.25 million. And it hit a grand slam at the box office. Now, it didn't hit a grand slam in the fifth deck like the original one did. This one might have made, uh, just off the top of my head, maybe only half of what the original did, but it still made 21.7 million, or in today, that being the year 2024, it'd be just over 75 million bucks on maybe if you transfer that to today on a budget of like $4 million. That's amazing. Well done. So the cash cow of Friday the 13th still continued with its second entry. Now this one I really like. I actually think this one is better than the original. What it does well here, it does just as good or even better than the original. And I'm going to go over some things that Some of the things that I do like more in the second entry than the original. And personally, I would put this one in my top three Friday the 13th films. It might sit in there at number three for me. Um, some people, this might be their favorite, for sure. But I'm going to go over some things I don't like about it, and it kind of drags it below the other two that I hold higher because the problems with those films aren't quite as large as what I have for me as a viewer in this film here. Now, this film has got your standard Friday the 13th stuff going on, such as nudity, thanks to Terry or Kirsten Baker, creepy characters away from Jason, like Crazy Ralph returns here from the original. He's in this one, played by Walt Gorney, and Scott. He's a straight up perv, no doubt about it, played by Russell Todd. And of course, the kills. That's what the slashers were known for. Now, the story of this film, certainly, if you haven't seen the original, uh, go out and watch that one first for sure. I'm a weirdo. The first Friday the 13th film I ever saw was with my best buddy at the time, Kevin. We did it. I think we were 11. We rented Friday the 13th Part 8. It was the newest Friday the 13th. I think he had seen all of them. I was new to the game. I was just kind of getting into horror films at the time. So I saw that one first. I think after that, it was this one here, Part 2. Um, but I would definitely suggest seeing the original. Just, go through, start at one and keep going. Um, Now, in this one here, we have a counselor training center to train camp counselors that is open. And this happens about 5 years after the original. So this is supposed to take place in 1985, even though it doesn't quite look like 1985, but that's when it's supposed to take place. And of course, it's near Camp Blood, which we never revisit. We never go back there, but it's supposedly near where the original happened, Camp Blood. But that shouldn't be a problem, right? No, that Voorhees lady is dead, right? Yeah, she is. So no problem, no problem at all. So by this point, we find that Jason, the son of Pamela Voorhees, even though I'm not sure if you're given her first name in the original, her son, Jason, didn't die or drown. He's actually living in a forest or in the forest near the camps and everything like that. Was he aware? Or you become aware rather quick in the film that he does know that his mother died. In fact, he has her head. Um, but wait, shouldn't she know he was alive? Um, And then Jason, shouldn't he have done something to protect his mother that night? Um, I don't know. Maybe he had to get up early for driver's training or something early in the morning. I don't know. So in the second one, it is now Jason killing camp counselors. Why? Don't ask that question. There's not going to be an answer. Um, so if you can get through this um, huge, gigantic hole that Jason would have put a machete through quite easily, if you can get past that, you might enjoy this. And I would say this is definitely a good one for slasher fans. When you get into it, um, it's very effective as a slasher. So fans of the slasher, they need to see this film for sure, I think. Now, the MPAA was going to actually give this film an X rating if they didn't do some serious cuts to the film. So, as I read, 48 seconds had to be cut from the film, um, which is fine. It doesn't necessarily hurt the film, or I've always really enjoyed this film. But the effects guy in this was Carl Fullerton. Um, and he had done effects for a couple of films I've done reviews for that I really enjoyed were Altered States and Wolfen. I just did that one. He did some effects to those films as well. But I wonder because I've never seen any of the like an uncut version of Friday the 13th Part 2. I think there's one out there. I've never seen it, but I just wonder if um, is the film amped up in any way? Are the kills great or equal to the original? Because I think the original, you do kind of get better kills. Like they're more, gruesome, I guess. Um, although there is one kill I really love in this film. I'm going to get to that later. But I just wonder if these cuts hamstrung Fullerton or showing off his skills in the kills of this film. I do wonder that. I also think the MPAA had a thing for, because this isn't the first time, um, butchering or making uh, Paramount or the maker of the Friday the 13th films to cut them or they would get an X rating. It seemed to happen frequently with the MPAA and the Friday the 13th films, which is too bad. Now, filming took place for this film between October and November, those 2 months of 1980. Now, when you think about it, when I looked this up, the first film was released on May the 9th, 1980. Um, this one was released literally less than a year later. This is back in the day when projects would get greenlit before the pen had even pressed on the paper to write a script. They would be greenlit. We're going to make a sequel. Let's go get those wheels a moving. And it worked out for Paramount, and it worked out for this series of films as well. They seem to crank out a film every year or every other year throughout the 80s. Now, Tom Savini, who did the effects for the original Friday the 13th, was asked to come back and do the effects to the sequel. He declined. He was actually working on another project at the time. So then Carl Fullerton came in to do the effects. Now, I'm going to kind of dive into things I didn't like and things I like, of course, about this film now. Um, what I'm not a fan of in this film is the beginning. What we're given is Alice or Adrienne King comes back as Alice, the survivor from the original Friday the 13th. And that's cool. That's great. But I find the beginning of this film meanders. Um, through her dreams, we see the original Friday the 13th, the ending, like in 5 minutes. But I ask why. Um, it was likely to add to the runtime. This is a film that's under an hour and a half, so by adding that in there, it kind of beefs the runtime up a little bit. But I would just say watch the original film and then get to the next one. I actually used to watch these two films back to back. I don't do that anymore because after a while, I found the beginning of this film kind of stank. It wasn't that good. It was like, I just saw that. I don't need to see that all again. We also see Alice going through some pretty boring stuff at the beginning of this film. Although her talking to her mother on the phone and telling her she's putting her life back together in the way that she knows how to do it, I like that. That's good. But everything that leads to it is pretty boring and pretty drab and not the big punch you're looking for at the beginning of a horror film, really. But once the phone rings, she picks it up. There's nobody there telling us that Jason must have broken into the neighbor's house and is using their phone, or she has a second phone somewhere in the house to call her on the phone, but you know it's Jason. But that's when the horror starts to finally amp up and begins to happen. And the rest of it works bad. Works, man oh man, a lot better than the rest of the beginning. So then Jason has put his mother's head into her fridge, asking me, how did he get that head? Did the cops, when they arrived, was the head there, or did Jason come in and steal the head, or did he steal it later on? Anyways, he then shockingly kills Alice. I think stabbing her in the temple with a screwdriver. Very shocking opening. But in real life, actually, Adrian King had a real life horrible stalker that stalked her due to the original film. Um, so from what I read, she wasn't really interested in a big role in this film due to those horrible experiences that she had. Um, in the end, though, this beginning seems so tacked on, um, and I think they could do much better in three ways that just came to me when writing things down about this film. Um, three different things, three different openings that would be better, or ways to have her character in the film. So you could have Alice sporadically placed in the film, maybe in the opening act and maybe in the third act. At the end of the film, maybe the first 10 minutes, maybe the last 10 minutes. That's not a lot of runtime really for a big character like her to return. Um, and then maybe at the end of the film, she could have a showdown with Jason. Um, as at the end of the first film, uh, they met, or did they? Wasn't it all a dream? I don't know. Another option that I think is even better, um, and it's kind of not abandoning Alice in the story, but there is a scene in this film that I really, really enjoy. And I actually think it's one of the best Friday the 13th scenes in the entire series, but it doesn't involve seeing Jason's character. But what it is Paul. He, in fact, owns or runs this counselor training center. Um, they're having a fire at night, and he's sitting around. They're all sitting around, and he's telling the story of Jason Voorhees and his mother. A very spooky tale, and it's done very well. I like how it's shot. The lighting is terrific. It really works well. You could have that as the beginning of your film. Um, Maybe even having Ted jump out, and scaring everybody to death, and it's not Jason. From then, you can be introduced to the characters, and then they can take the film from there. Um, that I like as well. I that's It's kind of got a big bang in the beginning of the film. I like that. The best um, way to do it maybe is just rewriting what they did, or redoing how her character was brought in the film, and everything like that. Um, you could go the real route of Psycho, and reintroduce her, and the viewers would think she's the main character again, only to have Jason kill her off, say in the first 20 minutes, and then maybe that's your first victim of Jason, is that in the film. Can you wait 20 minutes before you see a kill in a Friday the 13th movie? They certainly couldn't with all the films that came out. But um, if it's written well enough and directed well enough, and I believe Steve Miner could have done that, absolutely, it could really springboard the film into taking you off into exactly how the rest of the film went. Um, I like that idea, or just a retread or redoing what they did in the beginning, because I just uh, it's it's a downfall to this movie in my opinion. Now the scene where they're sitting around the fire and talking about Jason, the same scene was actually in The Burning. Interestingly, Tom Savini did the effects for that film. Same kind of scene was shot in that, released the same year. But personally, I think Friday the 13th Part 2 does it a step or two better than The Burning, in my opinion. Now, another thing I'm not a big fan of in this film is the look of Jason. In this film, he hasn't got his goalie mask on, or the hockey mask. He's not wearing that in this film. So he's really like a hillbilly Jason. He's got coveralls and wears a bag over his head, which is not really original because it seems very much from The Town That Dreaded Sundown, the bag over the head look. Now, the main two characters in this film really are Ginny, played very well by Amy Steele, and her lover, Paul, played very well by John Fury. As I said, he's running the counselor training center. She is his assistant. Um, Now, Ginny, then, of course, is the final girl for part two. And I think she is um, a much better final girl than Alice was. And some people, she is the best final girl in the series. I absolutely put her up there. I don't know if I could really say who's the best. Um, I definitely have a list of characters that are on that list. They're not all girls. There's Tommy Jarvis as well. Um, but they're either done really well or not so well at all. But Ginny is actually a really good final girl. I find she's actually quite smart, very human, um, very much a person you would like to get to know, I find, as a viewer. And she uses her wits to outsmart Jason, which some may ask, how difficult is that really to do? But in the end, she does use her wits on a number of occasions to get away from Jason or try and get the better hand of Jason, and in the end, to put a machete, I think it's a machete, yes, into his shoulder at the end of the film. And one thing with Ginny as well, it's right on the front cover of Friday the 13th Part 2 film. I really like that look. It's very iconic to me. The look of her holding a pitchfork, terrified. In the film, she is waiting. She thinks it's Jason at the door, so Paul's opening the door and she's ready to lunge at him or protect herself with this pitchfork. I really like that look. Um, and what that does is it then leads to the end of the film. Put that in quotations, unfortunately, like the original. Um, Jason crashes through a window, grabbing Ginny, all done in slow motion, just like Jason pulling Alice into the water. Very effectively done, slow motion like that. I find slow motion is, uh, through the years, there's been periods of time where it's way overused and that's not effective at all. But it's very effective here. And Fullerton gave us the look of Jason under, like, his face, what he looks like under the bag. That I actually really do like, and they abandoned it, abandoned it in the next entry and never came back to this. But Jason, he's got long hair and a beard. Looks terrible. Looks horrifying. I really like the work that Fullerton did there on the look of Jason. But unfortunately, the rug is yanked from under our feet, and then we see Ginny is carted away in an ambulance. Um, when really the credits needed to roll right after that scene of Jason crashing through that window. That would be a much more spectacular ending, I think, than trying to set up maybe a sequel where Ginny comes back to battle Jason, which never did happen. Now, definitely, I think Kurz, the writer of the film, has created better characters along with better ways to distinguish them between each other, more characters, adding maybe more life to the film, and it's a better script, in my opinion, than the original Friday the 13th. We also have tighter direction from Miner as well. Uh, he, and I guess one way of saying is that he's cut some of the fat off the film, if you will, in comparison to the original, by both Miner and Kurz, the screenwriter, creating a quicker, tighter flick. And it might run somewhere around 8 minutes less, maybe, than the original, somewhere in that neighborhood. As well as one character that works better in this one than the original is the jokester. Here it's Ted, played by Stu Charno. He's better written, I think. His jokes are funnier, and the tricks he plays are better um, than what we got in the original film with that jokester there. And I wrote down, it's interesting, with Ted, he survives at the end of the film. What happens is Paul has got this idea, okay, this is the last night. We're really going to get at training tomorrow. So this is the last night on town. If you want to come with us, we'll go out into town and have a couple of drinks. So Ted's one of them, goes along, and he's sitting at the bar with Paul and Ginny, and he's getting pretty ripped. And he survives. He doesn't go back to the camp. He actually goes to like an after hours joint once his place closed down to keep working on his elbow there. So he saved his life by doing that, which is interesting in a Friday the 13th film. That's what would save your life, because that should actually lead to your demise and Jason killing you. Now, as well, in that scene where they're at the bar, when they first show up, I know it doesn't quite look the same. They look differently. But when I watched it this time, I was like, man, they're going to Porky's. No, they're not. It doesn't really look the same, but it's the same kind of like atmosphere, sort of, in a way. I don't know, same time frame anyway, when the films were released. And when they're sitting at the bar drinking, they're actually drinking. I'm pretty sure, not 100%, but I'm like this close to it. They're drinking Molson Golden, which is a beer from Canada, from Molson. Uh, in Canada, they don't make it anymore. I think you may still be able to buy it in the United States, perhaps in some areas, but they don't make it anymore. It used to be in green bottles, and then they changed to brown, but they don't make that beer anymore. So I don't know. I just thought I'd note that to maybe any beer drinkers out there, or if anybody other than me has ever had a Molson Golden before, but I actually like them. But I just thought I'd note that as well. And of course, there's an excellent score here by Harry Manfredini. Now, I apologize if there is, but it seems extremely similar to the original, and I don't know if there's really any differences between the two, but it's excellent. Um, Amazing score, I think. Um, and from people talking about scores of horror films, just like I said in the original, I don't know if it gets enough credit for how effective it is in these films and setting up and letting that horror take place on the screen. Now, a couple of kills I should mention here. First off is the one involving Jeff and Sandra. They were lovers in this. And they're getting it on in the bed, but Jason comes in and stabs them with a spear that Ted was using to pretend to be Jason earlier in the film, which is a cool thing, I think. Um, but the death or the kill is very similar to one in Mario Bava's Bay of Blood from the early 70s. Um, so I thought I should state that. But my favorite kill in the film, um, and it's vicious. Um, it involves Mark, played by Tom McBride. He's actually in a wheelchair. I think a really good character. Him and Vicky are getting to know each other in this film. Um, but he's outside and he gets a machete to the head. And then he's like going down the stairs, the front stairs to the building, and he's dead. It's really, I think it then goes to a whiteout screen, which Friday the 13th did at one time in their films for like these big kills like that. I thought it was a very effective kill, and one that has stuck with me since I think the first time I saw it. It's gruesome. So that one is definitely my favorite kill of this one. There's really no other one that really comes close. That one is the best in my opinion. Finally, there was a novel written for this, and I think it wasn't released until 1988, so 7 years after the film came out. And it was written by, I believe it was Simon Hawke, I believe was the author's name. So, anyways, that is Friday the 13th, Part 2. And I definitely really enjoy it. I think it's better than the original. Um, and it really leads the way to enjoying the rest of the Friday the 13th films. Now, some people they may complain about the blueprint or the fact that Friday the 13th doesn't really go anywhere different for a while. Um, and that's fine because that was definitely, I think, a complaint of film critics at the time. I don't know if any of them ever liked any of the Friday the 13th films. They loved Halloween, but they didn't really like Friday the 13th. I think because it was, well, just a ripoff of Halloween. But I really enjoy it. And I found when um, I'll get to those films definitely in the future, but I found when they were trying something different or going in a new direction, it really didn't work very well. Um, this was all set up, I think, in a blueprint or a way to make the films happen, and it works best within that framework. So, anyways, that was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys are having an excellent day. And then sometime I will be getting to part 3 when I get to that in the next year. But anyways, have yourself an excellent day.